Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. I am absolutely thrilled. We've got Graham Bartlett here for our Ask the Experts panel, if I can get my words out of my mouth. So let you introduce yourself properly, and we'll get cracking with all of my questions. I've got a million. You're going to be here till midnight.
Quickly then, aren't we? Good evening. I know a lot of you. I know I'm Graham Bartlett. I am an author. And I am a police procedural advisor to lots of authors, TV writers, all sorts of people. So what that means is that I will work with authors or writers, TV writers, and help them get their police procedure as authentic as possible. I don't say realistic because no one wants real police procedure. Otherwise, you go and buy a big textbook. But authentic police procedure is what we're after, that keeps the story, keeps the characters intact. And I work with the authors to get that narrative going. Why am I qualified to do that? I am a former police officer. I was a police officer for 30 years in Sussex. Detective. Most of my career finished up as a chief superintendent in charge of Brighton and Hove, which the way I described it to my kids was if something went wrong in Brighton and Hove, it was probably ultimately my fault. So I spent a lot of time apologising.
So how did you make the move from a serving police officer? I forget what rank you were when you retired. Remind me.
Chief superintendent. But that's
superintendent. And how did you make the transition into what you do now?
Well, same as a lot of people in life, by accident, really. So when I left the police, I already knew Peter James very well because he did a lot of research with us, and he asked me to help on his books when I retired. So would I read through his books, would I answer questions for him, and of course I'd say yes. I'd be delighted to. And then he came up with this brainwave that we would write a non-fiction together. Well, he'd been asked to write non-fiction for years. People say, "Oh, tell us the real stories behind the Roy Grace novels." So he thought he didn't have the authenticity to do that because he'd never worked in Brighton and Hove as a police officer. So he'd seen some of my writing, sort of scribblings on blogs and things, and basically said, why don't you write it and I'll coach you through it. I'll be your editor, your sounding board. You'll do all the work, and I'll do all the polish. And that's really how it worked out. And it was amazing to have a mentor of that standing to help me write. And and that was the result. Death Comes Knocking, Policing Roy Grace's Brighton, which is the true stories behind the Roy Grace novels. And then from that, we did a lot. We did Harrogate and a few other book festivals, and lots of authors came up to me afterwards and said, "Can you help me on my police procedure? I'm not sure about this bit. I'm not sure about that bit." And it's kind of snowballed from there, really. And now I'm not sort of, underplaying it to say it is a full-time job. I mean, today I've been literally since about 8 o'clock this morning working with authors, working on manuscripts and such like. And it's brilliant. It's great. I love it.
You do love it. And you're right, it is non-stop. You must be exhausted because we've already had a phone call just to organise this, and that must be one of 1,000 things that you've had to get done.
No, it is. But it's not like the old job. It's not. I'm not. The public don't depend on me for their safety, thank goodness. And I'm not working as hard as probably most of the people on this event because I'm not a key worker. I'm not protecting the country. But I'm doing something that I think contributes to what people love, which is crime fiction, and helping people get authentic crime fiction rather than something that's not.
Absolutely. So I'm just watching this at the side of us. We've got the chat, and I'm watching. And just before we went live, Graham said, "Do you think we'll get anybody?" And I was like, "You're really popular in the group." And I'm just watching all these things just scroll up at the side of me. So we have got, I am going to look at my phone because they are coming up as Facebook user, but I can see them on Facebook on my phone, so I can see us and I can see who everybody is. So
if you're bored,
if I look at my phone for a while, I might be playing Pac-Man.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll sing a song.
I don't know why I even said Pac-Man. When was the last time? Probably not in this decade.
I knew what you're talking about.
So Judith Graham says, "Good evening. Looking forward to this."
Good evening.
Brian Price says hello. Brian's watching.
Oh, Brian, I've delivered some courses with Brian, so I run crime courses for people as well, so for writers and with the Professional Writing Academy. Brian, Kate, and I ran a forensics course for you. It was before Christmas actually.
We've actually got Brian coming for an event later in the year.
Yeah, he's great. He knows stuff. You see, Brian really knows stuff.
So while we're on the subject, I was going to ask you about this anyway. Tell us about the courses and things that you run, because anybody, if they're a reader or a writer, might find it of interest. So tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so working with the Professional Writing Academy, who, if people haven't heard them, then maybe you might have heard of Faber Academy. They provide the platform for the Faber courses and for the John York Story courses. And so working with them, I and some of my colleagues who you can see on my website deliver a variety of courses. Custody and interviewing, covert policing. We're going to do one very soon on firearms, police use of firearms. I think that's in April. And we also run a weekend course, which has actually started this evening. So we've got a group of people now that are probably, as we speak, watching a crime scene on, not a real one, it's one I created.
Featuring somebody very special to you.
Yeah, featuring my son, who laid in a pool of fake blood for 20 minutes in the summer while I videoed and photographed.
In the summer as well.
Oh yeah, he's got
That's commitment.
And they throughout the weekend we drip feed pieces of information that they would get in real time, as if they were actually investigating the crime, but they fictionalize it all. So we never tell them what's happened. We obviously give them the initial information. They see the crime scene, and then we will say, like, for tomorrow morning, they'll see an interview or a discussion between Kate and I, Kate Bendlow, who's a crime scene, scenes of crime.
Kate. Hi, Kate.
Oh, is she here? Oh,
don't know.
I don't know
if she's working or not. I've not got that far down the lots of comments yet.
Yes, she is, because she's put a crime scene with all I'm getting is Facebook user, a crime scene with a decking in need of paint. That's what she always criticizes.
Okay, yeah, she says hi both. Hi, Kate.
Yeah. So we will discuss the crime scene as if I was the investigator and she was the SOCO. And then we would say, well, around about now you'll get the post-mortem results. Around about now you'll start to get some hits back on phone messaging and all that sort of, So we actually strip it in, but they're working from the same scene, and it finishes up with them writing a 1,500-word piece on Sunday evening, where they basically have to, kind of say what happened, and it's always very different. And we have people like Peter James, Nellie Griffiths, Mark Billingham, giving mini tutorials about how to write as well. So I'd love to plug it here, but it's already started. They're already into it, so you might be able to get on it.
I will drop the link into the website afterwards, so people can keep an eye on that for upcoming dates. And I'm assuming you've got a newsletter that people can sign up for, so they'll know when the next
on the website. Yeah.
Brilliant. I will drop the link to that.
Fabulous, thank you.
Rebecca Miller, hi Graham and Sam, looking forward to the chats.
Rebecca is a fabulous editor. And
she is.
Yeah, she is.
We met briefly when she was on Catherine Yaff's event.
Oh yeah.
And as I was saying goodbye to one author, Rebecca had signed in, and she was their editor as well.
Yeah.
So she's in demand.
Yeah. I was with Kat today, actually, recording her podcast today. But yeah.
We'll have to share a link to that in the group as well.
Yeah.
I was a bit slow on the uptake. We're talking about the podcast, and she just went off and has done it separately, which it was a good idea, because when would I have time? It's impossible. Kaz says hello to us.
Hi, Kaz.
Leslie Lloyd, Alison O'Leary is saying hello. Gail Williams. Author K.A. Masson. Happy Friday evening, everybody. So tell us about K.A. Masson. She's just done a video for you, hasn't she?
Catherine is an amazing debut writer. She did ask me whether she was allowed to have a glass of wine while she was watching this. I hope she's got a glass of wine now. But Catherine, I've been working with Catherine for a couple of years now on her debut novel, which came out on I think Halloween last year, which is called Alter Ego, and she started from sort of zero knowledge of policing. I think she'll admit that, zero knowledge of policing. Came on a course that we did at the Guardian, and then sort of worked. I worked with her to kind of to help her. I mean, she gives me credit for it. It's her writing. Help her produce the most amazing debut novel called Alter Ego. But yeah, she's really kindly did a video. Her and her partner, who's a filmmaker, did a wonderful video saying how nice it was, and I didn't pay her a penny for that. So she's great, Catherine, and honestly, Alter. And I've used her book or passages from her book as examples of the way good authors, great authors, write custody scenes. She's got a fabulous custody scene in there, which is absolutely nails it. And it's not about it's about the senses more than about what actually happens. It's about what it smells like, what it sounds like, what it feels like as somebody who's never been arrested before.
Yeah, when you were saying about custody before, it's something that I haven't really given any consideration to. So I was watching an old episode of The Bill the other day, and you watch Smither, love Smither. And but you don't think about how that would work for a book. So what advice do you give to people about custody scenes?
Well, I mean, as I say, it's all about the senses. So there's a blog on my website called I think The Faint Whiff of Policing it's called, and it's all about the senses, and particularly if it's somebody that's never been in a custody block before. So the smells in a custody block are quite revolting. It smells of feet, sweat, blood, alcohol, vomit, cleaning fluid. It just hits you as soon as you go into the custody block. Particularly, urine is a particular smell that evokes from the cells. So you've got all that, and then you've got this. A lot of people are arrested who are violent, quite understandably, but also a lot of people have mental health issues. So the noise is, you get banging, crying, shouting, swearing, threats. When you're put in a cell, you're in a box basically that's has got a camera, and the only thing that's blanked out from the camera is the toilet basin. Okay. Everything else is molded in, so you're in this cold box where you don't know what's going to happen. You've got no sense of time because you had all your stuff taken from you. The lights on all the time. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know whether you're ever going to be free, particularly if it's a murder. You don't know whether you're ever going to walk the streets again. And every time somebody comes to the door, your heart's in. I'm not saying this because I've been in custody. I have been in custody, but not arrested. Mm-hmm. Your heart's in your mouth as thinking, oh God, is this it? Or is this? Am I going to get charged now? And then it's someone bringing you a cup of tea, which is notionally described as tea. The food is all. Sorry, I've got too much stuck in my throat. The food is all microwaved, sort of all day breakfast, just revolting. So, and the procedure is very, very clinical as well. You go in, you see a uniformed sergeant. There's a set procedure. You're searched. You might be strip searched. You might be swabbed. Your DNA taken. Your fingerprint taken. And it's so for a writer, it's about getting those senses out, getting the reader to kind of getting the reader to feel it. Another good example I saw of that was in Gillian McAllister's book, Anything You Do Say, is another writer that's really got that absolutely spot on.
Do you want to run and grab a drink to dislodge your throat? Are you okay?
It's gone. Okay. Yeah, no.
Okie doke. Abby Frost says hello.
Hello, Abby.
Hello, Chris. Kaz wants to know, what's the single biggest error most people make in their writing about police? Now, I'm sure there's more than one. I'm sure you must have a few go-tos. I often wonder how real the things that we read and see are, in the respect that we might think something, because we've seen it on TV for a long time, we might think that that's the truth. Mm-hmm. Which is where an expert like yourself comes in handy, because you can dispel the myths. But are there a lot of things, or is there a biggest myth, a biggest error?
I mean, to be honest, there are so many. But let me pick one as an example. There's lots of cultural myths about how officers speak to one another, how they behave, how the rank structure works, all of that. But one I want to pick out, which is actually a very, very serious one, is the myth about reporting people missing. So there's you read it in fiction, you see it on the telly, you can't report someone until they've been missing for 24 hours. That is such dangerous nonsense. It needs kind of explaining a little bit. So the principle of investigations is around this golden hour, the hour or a couple of hours, really, it is, where you're most likely to get the evidence as soon as you know offence has been committed. You can be able to secure technical evidence, CCTV evidence, witness evidence, all those sorts of things. They call it the golden hour. Who would design a policy where you deliberately skipping over those golden hours? You wouldn't do it. So this 24 hours thing is a complete myth. So I'll just give an example of real life when that happened, when it might have happened, but didn't. It wasn't about it. So I was the duty command officer at a station, and there was a call that had come in about 5 a.m. from a woman saying that her daughter had not come home from the nightclubs, and the answer was, well, she probably gone off with friends, or might have gone somewhere else, and don't worry about it. And the woman was saying, no, she is, she does that occasionally, but she will always text me. She'll never leave me guessing. She's 22, and no, honestly. Anyway, roll on about 8:30 a.m, and she's called in again, and the inspector came to see me and said, what do you think? And I said, well, if she's worried about her, let's at least kind of find out why and see what's happened and where she's been. So I spoke to her, and they managed to track down that she'd been to a particular nightclub. Went to the nightclub, found her on CCTV getting into a car, managed to track the car, got her and saw her, saw that car stopping and parking in an address, probably about half a mile away. Saw 2 people going to the address. So the decision was made by the inspector, well, just go and knock the door and see what they say for themselves. It's only now a few hours since it's been reported. So they knocked the door, no reply. Went round the back, still no reply, and they called up and said, look, we are a bit concerned because I think there's somebody in there, but so the inspector said, well, you've got the power to break in. So they broke in through the back window, managed to break the window, broke in, stepped into the window, and stepped on the body of the girl, and she'd been killed. And there's nothing to say that had they responded when the woman called in, that they would have been that they would have saved her. But that is the lesson that I always give to people who say wait 24 hours, because if there was a chance to have saved her, that would have been missed. So that it's a very long answer and a bit serious answer for the way that we're obviously that we're trying to have a bit of a light Friday evening, but I'd just like to get that message across, that do not wait 24 hours. The police may they may not do many investigations, but at least you're giving them the chance to risk assess it, threat assess it. So yeah. Sorry, whoever answered that question. I didn't mean to take it down to that level. Should we talk about?
No, I think that's really important, because that is one of the myths that, up until you've just said it, I've watched that so many times on TV. That is something that might put somebody off making that call. You're absolutely right. It might have put me off making that call. Maybe not. I'm a bit of a nightmare. I don't think it would stop me. I think I'd have asked the question anyway. But I think that's a really important thing for writers and just people in general to know.
I mean, I get a lot of writers that say to me, is it 24 or 48 hours before you can report a missing person?
The second you realise, make a call.
The second you realise, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That's really good advice, obviously. Rebecca Miller wants to know what cliches about the police are you tired of seeing in manuscripts?
Oh, so maybe I would say this because I, reached a reasonable rank, but high-ranking, incompetent, bullying, misogynistic, drinking, Masonic police officers is one thing. because, you know, frankly, you wouldn't get to a level if you were any of those things. I'm not saying if you slip through, but certainly if you behaved overtly like that, then you wouldn't get through. The idea that people get promoted into CID or demoted out of CID is completely wrong. You know, you move into CID in the same way as you would move into traffic as a specialism. So this whole kind of rank structure. And I'm just going to bring in Chris Curran's one there, because I've just seen her about high-ranking officers doing interviews. It's some authors are fixated about having their protagonists at superintendent level or DCI level, and then they're going out kicking doors in and speaking to witnesses and arresting suspects and wrestling on the floor and interviewing them. It just doesn't happen. You know, if you want to have an active protagonist, I would say DI, detective inspector, at the very most, because otherwise they're stuck behind a desk. It's an important role being the senior investigating officer, being the DCI, but you're kind of across the whole inquiry, and all of these bits are just one element of the inquiry. You'd never, you know, as when I was an SIO, you know, you don't kind of see the light of day, to be honest. You see, you see it a lot of the day. You know, you certainly see sort of 14, 16 hours of the day, but you don't get any fresh air.
Does not sound pleasant. Does not sound pleasant at all. Will Templeton says hi. Hello, Will.
Who's that, sorry?
Will Templeton.
Oh, Will. Hello, Will.
We love Will.
We big Will.
When we actually get to Harrogate, if you know, fingers crossed. Yeah, that will be an interesting picture. Me stood at the side of Will. I am 5 foot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Whichever who's taller than Will competition, shouldn't we?
Nobody's taller than Will. No. Brian says thank you. Thanks for the question, answering his question. He says thanks. My mind's gone blank as to
Brian Price.
Yes.
Because I said he knows stuff, because he does.
He does know stuff. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to his as the expert.
His book is just out of my arm shot there, but it's normally on my desk. How to Write Crime Scene.
And we've got Lorraine Mace watching. Cheryl Elaine's watching. Alison O'Leary says, do you ever get people who disagree with you or ignore your advice even though they don't have your experience and expertise? Good question, Alison.
I do, and I can understand it. I mean, I'm very clear that, you know, in myself that my advice is advice, and it's not, you know, and I will. What I will do, I'll do 2 things. One is I will tell you to the best of my knowledge how things are, and I will never guess. I will, if I don't know something, I will find out. So quite often people will say, "Oh, what's this?" And I'll go, "I'll get back to you." But also make it very clear that they're the author. So I'm giving them the knowledge, the information about how it is. I'll also try and give them, if we've had a chance to discuss the story and a chance to kind of, for me to understand the characters and the plot and the context. I'll find creative ways around the procedure for them, authentically, not making it up, but, you know, there are lots of ways that the procedure can be flexed to meet the narrative, but I'll know how to do that because, you know, I know how it works. So you'll know what happens. I'll give you suggestions about how you might get around it. But at the end of the day, you are the author, and you know, it's your decision what you do with that information. And you're writing a fiction. You're not writing a textbook. So if people decide to ignore me, if I know they're just gonna ignore me and they're going to, they're just gonna, they don't like what I've told them, so they're just gonna. Then I'll just say to them, please don't acknowledge me in your book, because I won't be associated with that. But most people are good about it. Most people will. At least, if they are going to get, they are going to sort of avoid something that I've said, they'll tell me, and quite often I'll just say, well, just gloss over the procedure. Then if you don't need to go into that level of depth.
Yeah, there was one of Malcolm Hollindrake's books, and he was really, really good about, and it's escaped me at the moment what it's called. I thought it was Behind Me. I'll come back to me. But he was asking somebody about how much subtext to use in a scene, And he said, you don't need to worry, nobody knows that, right? Just enough. Sometimes just enough.
Just enough.
A hint of it.
Yeah.
I loved this book, and I can't think what it's called, and that's going to drive me insane.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I've got this phrase that I use. You know, you don't have to get it right, but don't get it wrong. So, and what that means is you don't have to know, how to put a file together for Crown Court. You don't have to know how to do a post-mortem, or to I'm going to say something to annoy Kate now, to forensicate a house. Okay. But if you are going to go into that level of detail, don't get it wrong. But the best thing to do is kind of know as much as you need to, and then just give a nod to it. I mean, I've had hours long conversations with Peter James that have ended up being a paragraph or two in the book. It's just that he wanted to know absolutely everything so that he could take the decision as to how much he used, and it's often really light touch.
Bridging the Gulf, it was called. That took me a long time. So I'm down to Kate's comment: a crime scene with decking in need of paints.
You'd be pleased to know that I have actually replaced the decking now. If you're on the course, or in fact, you'll see it on the little video we did for this. It's behind me. That's the scene behind me. You'll see my paint there.
Oh, I was only looking at you, and I'm going to have to watch it again.
Yeah,
that's what looking at the background. See, I'd never make a detective.
The body. How do you not see the body in the background? It's my little boy.
Colin Blackman is watching as well, and Dawn Patricia Bolton, who writes as Tony Bolton, says hi.
Hiya.
Caroline Maston is saying you consult on TV shows as well. Don't you do you meet other police advisors and authors while you do that?
I do. I meet a couple of police advisors. Obviously, I've got a team of advisors that work with me as well. But I do meet with other advisors. A chap called John O'Leary, who does a lot of TV work. He's a great bloke. He lives fairly close to me. I haven't seen him for a while, obviously, because of lockdown. The TV work tends to be, well, I've only ever really done it during lockdown, so and all the sets are closed, so it tends to be sort of script advice, guidance on kind of locations, wardrobe, props, those sorts of things. But I do get involved in a lot of editorial discussions too. But I haven't actually been on set on any of them yet, which I don't know. I'd probably be a bit of a liability because I'd be picking out too much. I did a program called We Hunt Together, which was on Alibi TV last year. I'm just working on the second series now, and I didn't go on set for that. But they were I'd obviously explained enough because the set actually was as good as the scripts in the end. But I was worried. I was thinking, oh God, my name's tagged to this, and they're going to start having police officers standing in the corner of interviews. That's another one on TV, and you've got the uniform officer standing there in the corner of an interview. If only they had the people to do
resources to do it,
but they'd serve no purpose whatsoever. So that's something that I was watching The Drowning the other night, which I really liked, but even then there was a police officer standing in the corner.
See, again, never would have occurred to me that you do see on later. I'm going to go back to the bill again. You do see on later episodes that they don't have somebody standing in the corner, but it never occurred to me that you just wouldn't have that. Because when you see something, you don't logically try and engage your brain about it. You're just looking at the entertainment value.
Yeah. Well, I joined in 1983, and I've never stood in the corner of an interview room, so I don't know where it came from.
Interesting. We're going to have to look into that. I'm going to move on before that throws me. Have you had people ask you, because so many people are dodging it, have you had to give anybody advice about writing during lockdown, about how the police responses or anything to do with it?
Yeah, not a lot actually. I'm not sure. I mean, this, just from the work that I've done, and I've done quite a lot during lockdown advising authors. I think people obviously write. I mean, I'm very busy, so people are writing prolifically, but very few people have come to me with actual lockdown stories. That really centered in lockdown. I've had a few now. I'm doing a manuscript at the moment for somebody that is just after the lockdown. So obviously, hoping that it's going to finish by the time the book comes out. So it
Yeah.
gives a nod to it. But the one thing I was asked quite early, it was probably about in the summer last year, was, you know, how do police officers interview now, because of social distancing. My son has just joined the police, and had, you know, and I said to him, "Where do you interview now?" Because I thought, "How do you interview?" And he said, "Well, they've just reconfigured the interview room, so you're all, you know, just sat in the corners now, rather than
opposite ends
across." But yeah, no. So I've not had a lot on that. I mean, there's some stories to be had there, I think, but I think you need to be very careful that you're not just kind of, you know, churning up the same old things. But, you know, I think, you know, lockdown. I mean, we know that lockdown increased domestic violence. County lines gangs worked very differently during lockdown, using face masks as a kind of, you know, hiding in plain sight tactic.
For anybody who doesn't know, because when I first did safeguarding, it confused the hell out of me when it talked about county lines. Just explain what that means.
So county lines is basically predominantly London-based drugs gangs operating in the suburbs. So they will have what they could, you know, they'll have a line, hence county lines, which is a phone, and basically they send people out to, you know, places well, everywhere really, but you know, everywhere outside London, and they will control them from London, supply drugs into that area, establish networks of drug users, drug dealers, identify users, take over vulnerable people's houses and that's called cuckooing, to work from, and basically, you know, supply drugs into that area, exploit vulnerable people, exploit addicts, and all the money goes back up the chain. And it's a national problem. You know, it really is. There's the National Crime Agency, and you know, and every police force is involved in trying to tackle it, because it's huge.
Yeah, it must be. Catherine K. Masson has said, "Haha, I'm actually having a G&T. Is that allowed?"
Well, and the wine aspect, a balanced diet for her, I expect.
And Kaz says it's 100%. It's often what's in my mug when I do the interview. She does like gin.
Does she? Be good for her. She's a teacher. She's allowed to, isn't she? She just needs it at the end of the day.
I'm just because you said teacher, it's jogged something in my memory, in the back of my mind. So, you're talking about the Professional Writing Academy, and you actually advised on your page about the Write Well.
Yes.
So, do you want to, just for anybody who's watching who is a key worker, obviously I've been able to take advantage of the offer, which I'm very grateful for, and I wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for you. So do you want to give people just a quick overview of what that is?
I'll do that if you can look up the website address while I'm doing it, because I can't remember.
Well, I think it's writewell.org
or something like that, isn't it?
I think it's writewell.org.
So I think it launched this week or last week. Writewell, the Writewell community is an initiative.
Writewellcommunity.com, www.join. So, and there's some slashes in there. I will drop the link in at the end.
Fabulous. So it's a new venture by the Professional Writing Academy, drawing on the principle that writing is great for people's well-being. It provides, you know, obviously it's quite solitary, but it can also provide a really good networking. You know, it helps. You know, you can write through depression, you can write through loneliness, you can write through all sorts of, you know, mental health and well-being struggles that a lot of people are suffering at the moment. So they've just launched this community called writewellcommunity.org, which you can join, and it, you know, there are writing tasks, writing opportunities there, but also it's a community of writers. And if you're a key worker, you can you just need to. I think you just basically have to say what your occupation is, or you'll probably know more.
Yeah, it's like a drop-down list.
Yeah. So and you get 6 months free on it, and it you know, it's a fabulous initiative, and you know, it's not a money spinner at all. It's just something that they wanted to do to try and tap into people's need for, you know, a creative space, a creative way of being able to cope with these, you know, these weird times that we're living in.
I'm certainly very grateful of it. I work as a teaching assistant, so it's very strange being in school when there aren't many children, and my own children are at home. So I'm a teaching assistant teaching other people's children and having to go out to work and not teach my own children. It's very strange, very strange. But yeah, I was certainly grateful if you're sharing the link.
Yeah, no, you know, it's fabulous. And I mean, I do take my hat off to anybody that is homeschooling at the moment. I mean, I do safeguarding work in another part of my life, and a couple of people that I work regularly with on that are, you know, desperately trying to, you know, keep their communities safe and homeschool their children. And, you know, it's so difficult. And, you know, I just hope that we come out of it and children and parents are in a good place.
And I believe a police helicopter has just gone over my house, so we know that they're out there, they're working hard. We do get a fair few where I live. Not as many lately, obviously. No. So that hopefully is a good sign. Let's hope that's a sign of things to come. Steve Munoz is listening in his car. Hi, Steve.
Is he driving? Don't ask. You're allowed to listen, aren't you? As long as
you're allowed to listen, yeah.
I'm sure he was parked up.
We've got so many people watching and still so many questions. I'm nowhere near the bottom yet. Tony Kent. Hi, Tony. Tony's watching.
Hi, Tony.
Michael John Sims. Brian Price has said, "Are you allowed books in custody?"
You do. Well, you can't. You can't have your own books. Well, you probably could do if they search them properly, but you never know quite. You know the way that, I mean, Bright, you'll know this more than I do, but you know, certain substances can be impregnated onto paper. So if you brought your own book in there, you might be high as a kite on spice or whatever by the time you get your first. But
that was a myth, honestly. So okay.
Yeah. They have scanners in prisons to scan the letters for paper that's impregnated with them. Wow. Brian would say if it's not, I'm sure it's true. I'm sure I've seen it on Fly on the Wall documentaries, for prison documentaries. But they do have a stack of books. They're probably not the kind of books that you want to read. You know, they're not. You're not going to get any kind of Mark Billingham or Ellie Griffiths or Tony Kent or Peter James or anything like that. You'll probably get some. I'm not decrying this, but you'll probably get some, you know, Mills and Boons, and sometimes it's humorous as it is. They might, you know, if somebody that's been particularly kicking off and being quite nasty asks for a book, what better than to give them a Barbara Cartland to try and calm them down a bit.
Oh, see, now I think my mum used to read Mills and Boon, and I was going to say, well, surely any book is better than no book. And again, not disparaging, just not my thing.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'd read anything, because I'm not very good at sitting there with nothing to do.
I think I would as well. I mean, we talked before we went live about how many books. I need more bookshelves. I'm surrounded by books. I'm not touching the ones on the top today.
You got an accident.
Anything, not having anything falling off. Luckily, it didn't land on my head. The books are more precious than the head, though. Let's be honest. Sarah Reed says hi.
Oh, hi, Sarah.
Rebecca's having to dash, but she's going to watch the rest on replay.
Oh, okay.
She's like a ball of energy, Rebecca.
I know.
I don't know how she does it. She's just buzzing with energy.
She sent out so many Christmas cards, and I got a Christmas card from her. I didn't met her about 2 months before. It's like a page handwritten individual note in each one. How do you get the time to do that? I barely get time to make a cup of tea, let alone handwrite. I didn't do any Christmas cards this year, but she handwritten one.
I didn't. I bought some and then found out we weren't going to be allowed to give them out at school, so I've still got Christmas cards from a class that I just didn't write out.
Oh.
Shame. But there's worse things than not being able to give the kids a Christmas card. Christy J. Newport says hi, and Sarah Reed asks, which TV police show do you consider the most authentic, apart from the Sweeney, obviously?
Sweeney, Life on Mars, yeah, that was it. Most authentic, Happy Valley has got to be my one. Happy Valley, which was by Sally Wainwright.
Sarah Lancashire.
Sarah Lancashire, yeah.
I love that.
It's a bit older now. You know, it's been around for a while. The first series, particularly, but the characterization in that is absolutely spot on, and also the way, it wasn't hugely procedural, but where there was procedure, you just got a sense of reality. I mean, an example. There was one scene where a police officer stopped stop the bad guys up on the moors, and she was on her own, and they basically, I think they beat her up and then ran her over, basically. And you know, it's one of those scenes where you don't actually see it run, but you see them in the van, and the van goes up like that.
Yeah.
Sarah Lancashire and a couple of others, you know, go up there, blues and twos, you know, up, and they go there, and their first reaction is absolute horror and shock that their friend is dead in the road. And there's just that moment where they're just, oh my God. And then Sarah Lancashire, I can't remember the name of her character, but
I can't think.
Yeah, Sarah Lancashire. She says, right, okay, get up, seal off the road that way. You seal off the road that way. I want a tent over her, and she immediately goes into operational mode. Yeah. And that's so realistic, because even when it's one of your own, you know you've got a job to do that no one else is going to do for you. So, you know, and it just absolutely, and the whole series was like that. Erin Kelly, when we were doing our guiding masterclasses, used to talk about there's a scene where a mum shoots her own son, and Sarah Lancashire has to go and arrest her just after. I think she's there when the shot goes off. The woman's covered in blood, and Sarah Lancashire's hugging her and crying, giving the caution, because she knows that kind of that maternal agony that the woman's going through, and it just shows the humanity of policing. So that's my favourite one. I do rattle on, don't I, when you give me a question.
I like that, though. I like that you go into detail. It's good. And I think that kind of thing where you just go into overdrive, you just go into the mode. So there'll be that moment of pause, but surely possibly slightly more heightened than for just finding a person, a body, who's been, but when it's a colleague, even if you don't know them, but you see the uniform and you know, that must be. I mean, we talked a little bit before we went on camera about how how you'd be okay with me asking about how that something impacts on you as a police officer at any level. That must be. I wish I hadn't started this one. No, you wish you hadn't started a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to. I think I'd like to change my question.
Okay, we'll allow you to do that.
General impact of policing. I don't.
Sorry, just while you're changing, someone's just put on there. Bob Bridgestock advised on Happy Valley, and absolutely did, and it absolutely shines through. It shines through. I mean, he was obviously a detective. Well, obviously people might know that, but he was a detective superintendent in West Yorkshire, I think, and I think it was West Yorkshire. But anyway, you know, you can just see that authenticity coming through. So yeah.
Kaz is going to interview, actually.
Oh, really?
So but she might drop the date in for that. But feelings of policing in general, things must take a toll. You're not. You might seem superhuman. You certainly do, but obviously that's not going to be the case.
No, you do. I mean, you know, you see some horrible things. You know, you sign up, and you know you're going to see some horrible things over the course of a career, and you never quite know what they're going to be and when you're going to see them. You know, you can come into work and think that, you know, everything's running smoothly, and all of a sudden you're going to something that's quite horrific. But you know, in most cases, you know that you have to just get on with the job, because no one else is going to get on with the job for you. And you know, however horrific, you need to do a service to that victim and those families to do the job professionally. But sometimes that will seep across. That will seep across into your, you know, the feeling part of your brain, and it will upset you. I mean, for me, I'm not going to talk about this in any detail, because it will upset people, and some people might have gone through it. For me, it was going to cot deaths. You know, I just hated. Well, obviously, I hated cot deaths, but it was very, very difficult to retain that professional edge. Second book plug. Another book I wrote, which was Babes in the Wood, Babes in the Wood, which is about a 1986 double murder that was true. It's a non-fiction true crime story. which was resolved under the double jeopardy in 2018, and the story tells about how that all happened. I know a lot of the people that were involved in the 1986 murders, and when I went to interview them about this book, 30 odd years on, some of the people that I'm not going to say people that I thought, some of the toughest, hardest, most sort of rugged police officers I know wept when they were talking about, particularly the bloke that found the body, and the senior investigating officer, who was, a legend, a real tough nut, an old style cop, was in his 80s now, and he was crying when I was sort of talking to him about it, and it was so awful. But that these kind of jobs, they do go and they stick with you. And of course, in the 80s, they didn't have all of the the welfare support there was now, which isn't perfect, but it's better than it was. And at that time, it was kind of grin and bear it and go to the pub. That was your welfare support. So it's not surprising that some people now that are in the twilight of their years are still hanging on to the agony of crimes that they dealt with back in the 80s and prior to that as well.
Yeah, it can't be an easy thing, and I just marvel at the work that you've done and that people continue to do.
I think people, I think that's the thing. People continue to do it. I mean, my stories are no different from other people's. People that have had similar careers to me, dealt with worse than me, coped with them better than me. And the fact is that people are out there doing it in much tougher environment than we are. I'm not going to make political points, but you've got police officers out there, no sign of a vaccine because they're in their early 20s, who are dealing with some quite difficult people, and then possibly passing the virus back onto their family and to vulnerable people that they go to on the next job. So there's much braver people than me, and I think we need to remember that.
We'll go on to Steve Munoz has asked, favourite crime film or book? It's a little lighter.
Favourite crime film?
I think that's an impossible question.
Well, favourite book? I've got to say, I can't say Peter James, can I? Because that would be, he's my mate, isn't he? But
that's the one that's your favourite.
No, I'm going to say, and I know I'll get a lot of support in this book club, the Mike Craven's Washington Post series. What fabulous stories they are. What I love the character. I love the characters. I love Tilly. I'd have Tilly on my team any day of the week. I love the kind of the vibe between them. And of course, the stories. He's got a sick mind, doesn't he? But the twisty turvy. I just can't put those down. They're amazing.
I'm going to get to interview him soon, actually, and I'm excited because I think there's just going to be. I'm not going to need a filter at all. I'm going to be able to say whatever I want, and he's going to take the mickey out of me relentlessly. We had Kaz asked a question in the book club, and it was, what do people like and what would people like more of or less of? And Mike said, more of me, less of everyone else.
It's great.
He's nice.
You look at him and you think, this bloke used to be a senior probation officer, and can you imagine being that offender in the community that is breaching their license, and him turning up at your door to sort of say, are you going to behave or are we going to send you back to prison?
I would behave. I would absolutely behave.
Every time.
We've got so many more comments, and we've only got 10 minutes left. I did say I'm going to keep you here till midnight.
No, I honestly didn't think we'd have anything to talk about, but you seem to have managed.
Me and you managed ages and ages on the phone chatting away, so this was never going to be a problem.
You did. I just listened, obviously.
Oh yeah, because you're not very chatter.
Shy
and retiring. Will Templeton wants to know, how is the SIO allocated in a murder case? What rank is chosen? Is it whoever is on duty and sober with like a winky face with its tongue stuck out?
Well, you know better than that. So the SIO. So
most knows they can get away with being cheeky with us. That's it.
Yeah, Yeah, I'll get a ladder and punch his lights up. So the SIO, so every force has a major crime team. So they have a dedicated team. Some of them are shared with other forces. So I live in Sussex. Sussex and Surrey share a major crime team, and their job 24/7 is to investigate murders, kidnaps, serious attempt murders. So I mean, kind of, very, very close to murder. That top level of crime. And they are staffed with, they tend to be headed by a detective superintendent. In the Met, it's slightly different because they're bigger, and it might be different in some of the metropolitan forces as well, Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, Merseyside. But they're headed by a detective superintendent, and beneath them sit a number of DCIs, detective chief inspectors, and they are the senior investigating officers. And so it would be whoever is the duty SIO at that particular time, and they tend to take like a week on as duty, and then so they'll take anything that comes in that week, and then the other time they carry on dealing with those jobs. Sometimes they have to kind of get someone else in because it's a particularly busy week. So they're the senior investigating officers, the SIOs, and then they will have a DI working to them, and they will be the deputy SIO. And on occasions for a very kind of straightforward murder, so where you've got a body, you've got a killer that's obviously there. Sometimes they even wait at the scene, with cliche, but with the knife, with the blood dripping from it. Then the DI might take the SIO role for that if it's particularly busy. But the DI sits as the deputy SIO, deputy senior investigating officer, and those two work together as a partnership. And then below that, you've got the DSs and the DCs who do all the work. Frankly, will do all the outside work. So the DCI makes all the decisions. The DI supports them in that, and kind of deputizes when the DCI is not around, and then everyone else does all the work.
Admin Sarah Mackenzie's watching.
Pardon?
Admin Sarah Mackenzie's enjoying listening. She says hello.
Hi Sarah, hello.
Marion Todd is delighted to be here.
Hello Marion.
So Catherine Masson says that was the most fantastic takeaway from working with Graham. Not only what would happen, but what could.
Yeah. No, that's quite an important distinction, because there's a lot of things that wouldn't happen, that simply wouldn't happen. So, I've nicked a lot of this from Neil White, who we used to deliver courses with. So Neil White would say, what couldn't happen. Is what couldn't happen. So you couldn't have a murder tried at the magistrate's court. That couldn't happen. You couldn't get DNA back within the hour. That couldn't happen. Things that wouldn't happen generally means that they wouldn't normally happen, but there could be a way around it. So for example, something I was advising an author on this afternoon was they wanted to have a friend. This is quite a common one actually. A friend investigating the murder of another friend, and that wouldn't happen. Probably shouldn't happen, but could happen. The trick is to put in the various kind of the building blocks really to allow that to happen. So what is it about that officer that makes them more valuable on the investigation than not on the investigation? So that's kind of how you work it, because quite often people have written a book and then they'll come to me and go, I want them to, and I don't want you to throw away 100,000 words, so we better find a way around this for you. But it's quite subtle the way you have to do it, because it's so unusual that. So the wouldn'ts and the couldn'ts are quite important, and we always work with the wouldn't and try and find a different way of reaching the objective with the couldn'ts.
Yeah. It does happen in The Birdwatcher by William Shaw, which is one of the books behind me. I'm not touching the Dunning books, not happening. But I'd love to show off the cover. I'm not going to because I'm clumsy. But that does happen with William South in the book. But it's written in such a believable way that you just kind of don't even think about it until afterwards.
Did I pay you to say that? Because I advised it. I advised.
You advised William. Now
Yeah.
I knew you knew each other, but I didn't know that you'd advised.
Came up.
Well, that was it's one of my favourite ever books, The Bird Watcher.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Absolutely love that book.
And it was one of the first books I ever advised on, and it broke my heart because I was thinking, I'm going to have to tell him he's got to ditch it. And of course, you can't tell William he's going to ditch the book. So we basically created a role for South that meant that he was invaluable to that particular inquiry. And all you need to do is you need to create that backstory, that kind of role for your officer, get somebody to make a decision that, you know, and you can make it, you can infer it or you can say it that, you know, actually, you know, we wouldn't normally have you on the inquiry, but, you know, on this occasion we've got to. So
we've got no option.
Stick to your brief kind of thing, and then they don't, obviously, but
it worked beautifully. So well done.
Well done, William. I just told him what he was.
One of my favourite ever books. It was my second to the top of my list last year in my top 10. Love that book. Oh, see, we're going to have to move. We've got 3 minutes. We're going to have to move on because I could sit and wax lyrically about that book. David Gilchrist says, do you advise authors to include black humour in their books?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I think it's really important, particularly when you're looking at authenticity. You have to be a bit careful with it because you know, sometimes what goes on behind the station door stays behind the station door. But you know, I mean, David will know from his background that you know, black humour gets you through so much, and you know, it's important if you want your officers to be authentic, for them to kind of have a bit of light relief about the body they've just been to, or you know, about the not guilty verdict they've just had to endure, or you know, because that's how you get through. And you know, emergency services are all the same in that regard. You know, you ever go out with the fire service or paramedics, you know, they'll be exactly the same. It's a coping mechanism. It's never disrespectful. You know, you really have to be respectful around, you know, the victims and the families, but sometimes, you know, just the circumstances, you know, that, and quite often it's about the way the officers have behaved, or something that the officers have done. You know, they'll just rip the mickey out of each other, and that gets you through. But it's important, I think, to use it in the right way.
And really, that is it. I mean, we've got. I'm still scrolling. There's loads. Sorry to anyone that we've not been able to answer your question or acknowledge that you're there yet, but it is 8 o'clock and I know Graham's knackered.
Just want to say that there's any authors that have any, you know, if they want any support with their writing or you need to do manuscript reviews or whatever, you can find my contact box through my website, which I think you put up a couple of times on the website.
I'm going to drop that in. So I will let you talk and I'll find it. If you need any
if you need any support with your writing, or you know, just want to kind of be friends with me. I need friends, really. So be friends with me on Facebook. I do need friends, but I'm not that desperate, really.
I'm going to just post one of the... Oh, it's come up as a really long link. I apologise. I don't know why it's done that.
Oh, right. Oh, my Lord.
I don't know why it's done that. How bizarre. But that's your police advisor. So HTTPS. So it's policeadvisor.co.uk/. So it has actually come up underneath, though. You can see that it's the right link, and I'm not trying to scam or spam anyone. You can see the image is under there. I don't know why it came up as a massive link. Jeez. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone.
A brilliant hour.
I can't believe you spent part of your Friday evening with me. and Sam just nattering. But no, thank you ever so much. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the questions.
We love a natter.
And happy to come back or whatever, really. So, but can I just finally? This sounds like an Oscar. Can I just thank the book club for everything you do? You do so much to support readers and writers. You know, you've got a fabulous reputation in the writing and the reading community. You know, you manage the group really well. You're supportive to new writers, established writers, and you facilitate fabulous discussions. you know, whatever you've done, however you've done it, it's very special. Blush away.
No, we absolutely love it. Every one of us. We wouldn't do it otherwise. We love it, and we're really grateful to everybody for the amount of support that we get as well. I'm going to ask you one final question because I'm just.
This is the Columbo moment, isn't it?
Just one more thing. Who's going to be your Harrogate if you get to go to Harrogate this year? I'm quite chuffed with myself. I had the best moment today where Harrogate tweeted that and tagged me in it.
Who's going to be my Harrogate? I don't know.
Because Kaz is mine. Hi, Kaz.
Is she?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
And all of the admins and any members, obviously, that go. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Who?
Well, that's clever. I'm allowed to be a bit smug about that one.
Yeah, no, that's very clever. Yeah, no, I'll have to give that some thought. I'll have to. There's so many people that I'd like to be, but they probably will say no. So I'm not going with that Kate Bendelow.
I knew you were going to say that.
She got me drunk.
I'd go with Kate Bendelow.
She got me drunk last time, and hello.
Oh yeah, Kate's fault. Yeah. Pull the other one. Right, I'm gonna let you go. Because otherwise I will literally sit here for another hour and then look up and go, oh. Thank you so much for joining us and to everyone who's asked questions tonight. Do you want to give us one quick flash of your books again before we go? Got to be done.
Really? Oh, hang on. Which way's the camera? That way. There we go.
So we've got Babes in the Wood, and we've got Death Comes Knocking.
Yeah. See
oh, do you know what? Let's end on a funny story. Tell me about the review for Death Comes Knocking. Was it that was a bit too focused on one person?
Well, the review, yeah. So Death Comes Knocking is called the subtitle is Policing Roy Grace's Brighton. And the premise is that it is the true stories behind the Roy Grace novels. So day 3 or 4 publication, my first 1-star review, devastated, even though it said something like it was okay, but did he have to keep mentioning Roy Grace in it? You know, what's all this Roy Grace stuff? You just think, well, it says on the front of the book, you know, if you don't like Roy Grace, don't buy the book, you know. And that taught me that actually reviews are just a matter of taste. I was going to say something a little sharper, but it was a load of old.
But you've had a lot of 5 stars since then, and if that's your 1-star review, I think that's blooming good going.
I think I had other ones like it turned up late, or the packaging was damaged, or stuff that's completely in my control. But
yeah, that's when you go and get the book out of your garage and send it.
That's right.
Completely your fault. Absolutely terrible. Thank you so much. As you can tell, I've loved it. I knew I was going to have fun tonight.
I've had a ball. So no, thank you everyone. And I'm going to have a lie down now, I think.